Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something today. Not exactly a light topic, but super important. It's about claiming funds from a deceased relative's bank account, specifically at Punjab National Bank, PNB.
Yeah, it's something, most of us will probably have to deal with at some point, and it can be really tough, especially when you're already grieving.
Totally. You're suddenly hit with all these forms and legal stuff. But luckily, you sent us the actual PNB claim form and instructions so we can kind of decode it together. And let me tell you, some interesting things popped up. Like, did you know you might need a magistrate to sign off on this thing?
Yeah, that's one of the things that can be tricky, right? Clarity is so important, especially when emotions are running high. Maybe we can use an example to make this more real. Let's say there's a son who needs to access his mother's savings account at, let's say, the PNB branch into Gore Garden.
Okay, yeah, I can picture that. So the form starts off pretty basic, asking for like personal details. You put in your mom's name, your info as the claimant, that kind of thing.
And even right there, you can see how Indian banking regulations try to make this easier. By naming a nominee, someone who can manage the account if you pass away, you might not even need to go through the whole probate thing. That could save your loved ones months of legal hassle.
Hold on, so even if I'm in the will, if I'm not the nominee, things get more complicated.
Exactly. It's a good reason to talk with your family about what they want AD to make sure they've got nominees set for their accounts.
Okay, that's a big takeaway right there. Back to our form. After the personal stuff, it asks for account details.
Right. The branch name, like Tagore Garden in this case, and the account number.
Now, this seems like basic info, but there's got to be a bigger reason they need it, right?
Oh, for sure. Banks have to follow strict rules. They need this to be absolutely certain the money is going to the right person, no fraud, no arguments. It's about protecting everyone involved.
So it's not just pointless paperwork, it's actually like a safety measure.
Exactly. And this actually leads to a key part of the claim form, the witnesses.
Right. This is where it gets interesting. They want a magistrate, a judicial officer, a government officer, a bank officer, or two people the bank trusts.
It's interesting, right? They give you all these options.
Yeah.
Getting a magistrate's signature would definitely make things official and reduce the chance of anyone arguing later.
But I'm guessing it's not easy for everyone to just grab a magistrate for a bank trip.
Exactly. That's why they have those other choices. It's about making it possible while still keeping things secure.
So like two bank employees would work, or even two family friends, if the bank says it's okay.
Yep. Flexibility within a set structure,
Okay, listeners, if any of you had to go find a magistrate for this, let us know. It sounds like an adventure. But whoever you get, you need TWS signatures, that's clear.
2 signatures, yeah, for sure. Adds another layer of making sure everything's right.
Got it. Now, besides the form, they list out all these documents you need. The death certificate, of course. But then they want your AE, your mom's ID in our example.
And that's where originals or certified copies come in. Basically, a photocopy officially verified as a true copy, so it's legally solid.
So a regular copy wouldn't be enough?
Nope. Someone could change a regular copy easily. Certified copies have ways to make sure they're real.
It's like a reminder to keep important stuff organized, Imagine trying to find your mom's PAN card in the middle of all this. No thanks.
Absolutely. Which brings us to another important tip they give. Visit the branch before filling out the form.
Now, why is that so important?
Bank rules aren't always the same everywhere, and everyone's situation is different. Talking to someone at the bank can clear up those little things and make it more personalized,
Plus, just having a real person to help you can be reassuring, especially when you're dealing with a loss.
Definitely. Banks are there to help you through this. Don't be afraid to ask anything you need to.
Okay, we talked about personal details, the witness thing, documents, even visiting the branch before you start. But we kind of skimmed over this whole nominee business. What does that even mean here?
Well, that's where things get interesting and where having a nominee can make a huge difference. So a nominee, it's basically like you're picking someone to take over your bank account if something happens to you, someone you trust to handle your money.
So, like in our example, the son was already the nominee for his mom's account. That makes it easier, right?
Exactly. When you've got a nominee, it cuts through all the waiting and legal stuff because they're the ones allowed to claim the money. No long court processes.
Makes sense. Saves you a ton of hassle when you're already dealing with so much, like having someone pre-approved to inherit your account,
That's the idea. And it's not just for savings accounts. Fixed deposits, those recurring deposit things, even lockers. You can and really should have nominees for all of them.
Oh, good point. I need to check if I'm on anything for my parents. and maybe remind them to do the same for their stuff while I'm at it.
That's being smart. Honestly, it's good advice for anyone listening. Maybe not the most fun talk to have, but having those conversations now and making sure everyone knows what's up, it can save a lot of headaches later.
Okay, nominees are key, that's clear. But what if someone doesn't have a nominee? Where's the money go?
Well, if there's no nominee, the people who are legally the heirs have to prove it. They might need a succession certificate or a court order, that sort of thing.
Succession certificate sounds intense. What even is that?
It's basically a document from the court that officially says who the legal heirs are. Like, who gets what from the person who passed away.
So it's like if there's no nominee, the court steps in to do that job, making sure everything's split up fairly and legally.
Exactly. It's there to stop any arguments or confusion between family members, that kind of thing.
I bet getting one of those certificates isn't quick or easy, huh?
Yeah, not really.
Really?
Usually you have to go to court, file a bunch of paperwork, maybe even attend hearings. It takes time, and you might need to hire a lawyer too.
Okay, so for someone listening, if this happens to them, loved one passes, no nominee, what's the first thing they should do?
Honestly, talk to a lawyer. Someone who knows about inheritance and that whole probate process. They can tell you exactly what you need to do to get that succession certificate, since it's different depending on where you live.
Good reminder that sometimes getting expert help early on can save you trouble later. Stuff that seems simple can get messy fast, especially with legal stuff involved.
Totally agree. When you're dealing with loss and emotions, having a lawyer to guide you can take a lot of the weight off, knowing you're doing things the right way.
So back to the PND form for a minute. There's a part asking about the deposit itself. Is that just double checking they have the correct account?
Yeah, exactly. You've got to tell them the branch name, Tagore Garden in our case, and the account number. If there was a locker or one of those safe custody receipts, you'd need those details too.
So our example, the son is only getting the savings account, no locker, so he'd skip that part.
Right. Those sections would be left blank.
Got it. So we've covered personal details, the nominee thing, witnesses, documents, even going to the branch ahead of time. Anything else we need to know about this form specifically?
Oh, there's one more super important thing. The form's really clear that you need originals or those certified copies for all the documents, death certificate, IDs, all that.
Right, like we said, those certified copies prove that the document is the real deal.
Exactly. Showing up with just photocopies won't cut it. You don't want to have to start all over.
That visit to the Tagore Garden branch is sounding better and better all the time.
It always helps to get your questions answered and be totally prepared.
Yeah.
No delays, no extra stress.
And just having someone to walk you through it, especially when you're dealing with grief, that can be huge.
Absolutely. Remember, banks are there to help you. They know all the ins and outs of this and can give you good advice.
Like having a guide through a maze, making sure you don't get lost.
I love that analogy. Totally captures that feeling of being overwhelmed, but also having someone to lead you through it.
So I think we've pretty much cracked the code on this whole process. Claim form, nominee, documents, the branch visit, we've gone through it all.
I think we've given folks a good starting point and some clear steps to take.
And before we move on to some final thoughts, there's one piece of advice from those instructions that we haven't stressed enough. Be patient.
Oh, that's crucial. These things take time, Rushing can cause mistakes or just add more stress when you don't need it.
Slow and steady wins the race, as they say.
That's it. Breathe, trust the process, and know that everyone's working to make sure it's done right and fairly.
So, to sum it all up, the form, the nominee, the documents, the branch visit, and a big dose of patience. Not exactly light dinner conversation, but definitely important.
It's well said. And to our listeners, if you're going through this right now, be kind to yourselves, ask for help if you need it, lean on your friends and family, and don't hesitate to reach out to the bank if you've got any questions.
Okay, before we wrap things up, there's one scenario we haven't talked about yet. What happens if the account holder didn't choose a nominee? It seems like that happens more than we'd think, and it can really make things tricky.
That's a really good point, and it goes back to why planning ahead is so important. But let's dive into what happens when there's no nominee on the account.
Yeah, when there's no nominee, things can get, well, a bit more complicated. The legal heirs, they're the ones who have to claim the money then, and that usually means getting something called a succession certificate.
Okay, a succession certificate. That sounds pretty official. What is it exactly, and how do you even go about getting one?
So basically, it's a document from the court that officially declares who the rightful heirs are for someone who's passed away. It also says who inherits what, like which assets or property go to whom.
Ah, so it's kind of like if there's no nominee, the court has to step in and do that job, making sure everything's distributed the right way according to the law. Exactly. It's really important for preventing disputes or confusion, making sure things are clear for everyone involved.
I can imagine getting a succession certificate probably takes some time though, right? It doesn't sound like a quick process.
You're right. It usually doesn't. You have to file a petition with the court, provide a lot of documents, and you might even have to go to court hearings. It can be a long process, and sometimes you might even need to hire a lawyer to help you through it.
So for our listener, if they're in this situation, no nominee on the account, what should they do first?
The best thing is to talk to a lawyer, someone who specializes in inheritance and probate law. They can give you specific advice on how to get a succession certificate, since the process can be different depending on where you live.
It's a good reminder that getting advice from an expert early on can save you a lot of trouble later. Things that seem simple can get complicated really fast, especially when you're dealing with legal stuff.
Definitely. When you're also coping with a loss, having that legal guidance can take a huge weight off your shoulders, knowing that everything is being handled properly.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. We started off feeling a little overwhelmed by this PNB claim form, and now we've covered everything from nominees and witnesses to supporting documents and even what to do when there's no nominee.
Yeah, it's amazing how much we've unpacked just from this one form. It's really got us thinking about inheritance, legal processes, and the importance of planning ahead, hasn't it?
It really has. For me, the biggest takeaway is the power of being proactive. Talking to your loved ones, making sure nominees are designated, keeping important documents organized can make a world of difference when the time comes.
Absolutely. It's not always easy to think about these things, but taking care of them now can save your loved ones so much stress and heartache later on.
So, to our listeners, it's a good reminder to check our own affairs. Do our loved ones know where to find important documents? Have we made things as easy as possible for them? It might not be the most cheerful topic, but taking care of these things now can prevent a lot of potential difficulties later.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
And until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those important documents organized.